Hi everyone, it's me again. Welcome to the Plot Twisting Show with Lady Lara. I'm very excited about today's episode because I have a very special guest with me. So today I have my dear friend Ofure on the show. Ofre and I have been friends for over 2 decades. It's been a long time coming. We went to high school together, and she's a phenomenal person.
Oh,
Amazing, very smart lady making waves in the healthcare field. She has a doctorate in oncology, absolutely phenomenal person. And I'm happy to have her on the show today. We're going to be talking about something really delicate, sensitive for a lot of people. And I'm so happy that Ofuri agreed to feature on the show today and also just share her story and encourage everyone. So, without much ado, we'll dive right in. Ofuri, you're welcome to the Plot Twisting Show. Thank you for coming on board today. I'm happy to have you here.
thanks so much, Lara. You didn't warn me that you will shake my leg with this type of introduction. Next time, next time, please, give me a heads up because I know it's just two of us. I don't know that there's a third person on this call. So how far? But now it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure, to do this with you, and especially because of how long, this has already been in the works. We've
Yeah.
been trying, and finally here we are doing the
Oh, yeah.
recordings, and I'm so happy about that.
Amazing. Yeah, and one thing I need to mention to my listeners is just starting out the plot twisting show. Offering was very pivotal. It's always nice when you have people who are there to just stand by you, support you, encourage you through your dreams. And it's also not lost on me that Offer is the very first guest I'm featuring on the plot twisting show. Babes, thank you so much.
Thank
You're
you.
just you're amazing. So yeah. So today, what do you okay, so before I'll let you introduce the topic, like what do you
Mhm.
have to share with me and just share with our listeners worldwide?
Okay, beautiful. So I figured, so when Lara chose, the scope of this podcast, I badly wanted to, you know, be a part of it. Let me just be honest. And I thought, okay, what story of my life, of the many stories, would fit, this scope? And the one thing that came to mind, it was like a no-brainer, was, my fertility journey. And that's is something that, people who know me have heard of one way or the other. So it's on my socials. I'm speaking to people about it because the way that plot twist happened for me
Yeah.
deserves sharing. It's
Hmm.
nothing that I would, in my right senses, keep under covers. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I find that when it comes to fertility in general, it's really nothing new.
Yeah.
You look at the statistics, you hear of how common, for instance, miscarriages are, or gynecological conditions. They're so common, but now that I think of it, back then, I was really clueless. When I say back
Yeah.
then, like
Hmm.
before I got to the bridge, I had no
Yeah.
clue. The
Hmm.
only person I knew in all my life until when we started trying to have a baby that didn't have a child, just one woman. She was our neighbor, and she was the only one that openly people knew, oh, she didn't have a child, she was married and she didn't have a child. But I had
Yeah.
no idea how many women had miscarriages. I had no idea how many of them were
Hmm.
undergoing fertility treatment. So yes, it's a topic that touches people, women, pretty often, and it deserves, all the highlights and all the attention, frankly.
Yeah. I'm really happy that you said that because I feel like a lot of people treat fertility and infertility and just the journey in between as something shameful. Like it's like a taboo thing. Imagine you saying, oh, growing up, the only thing you knew was of a neighbor who was married and didn't have kids. This is not a topic that our moms or our dads or anyone speaks to. For all you know, I mean, maybe your mom even had miscarriages that you don't know, she's even
Exactly.
never mentions to you.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
even this is
really.
something friends go through. Like I was talking with a friend of mine and she told me, oh, I had a miscarriage, but it's a while now and I don't want to talk about it. I understand like this can be very painful and you also don't want to re-traumatize people, right? But also I think people just see it as something shameful. Sometimes infertility is nothing to be ashamed of. Like, for example, you have a migraine or
Hmm.
you have maybe like short-sightedness and you need glasses or you have
Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
or you have bronchitis and it needs to be treated. Reproductive system, it's part of our body. And if you won't be ashamed of having a migraine, you also shouldn't be ashamed of going through infertility, right? But people handle situations differently.
Yeah.
So I'm really happy we're talking about this because I'm hoping that our listeners would also maybe just learn from your journey
Hmm.
and yeah, people will feel more comfortable talking about this area of their life. Maybe.
I hope so. I hope so. Fingers crossed. And yes, let's see. Who knows? Maybe some other topics, arise from this discussion that are also worth sharing with your audience,
Oh yeah, for
There's so
sure.
many of them. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Oh, one of the things I think about that I'm also like, I hope I get to feature someone who would want to talk about it is menopause, perimenopause, and just all
Hmm.
the wildness, the craziness that
I know.
happens before you hit that mark. And
Yeah.
a lot of people don't even know that is what is happening to them because we don't talk about it.
Girl,
So,
see,
yeah.
I'm with you on that because anything women's health, I personally hate to see, and I use the word hate here loosely, but I do not like to see women. Not that men's health is not important, because I know there are people that, are always ready to, jump in and take the opposite side. But
Yeah.
when it comes to women's health and the way our society was set up,
Mm-hmm.
I would love to see women sharing more,
Yeah.
teaching the younger ones more, and
Yeah.
getting the support that they deserve because we deal with so much already.
I
And
agree.
if on the research front, our topics are not getting the attention, at least within ourselves, let us learn and hold each other's hands and help
Mm,
jump in where we can. So yes, I'm completely with you on that.
right. And I think this is just the right points to dive into your story and start. One of the questions I have for you, so let's start from the beginning. When exactly did fertility become something you were consciously thinking about?
So
And take your
let's,
time, right? I
yeah,
know this is something really difficult you went through.
yeah,
So please take your time to, just reflect and respond. Yeah.
sure, sure. So in my case, I recall that I had my very first period in SS1.
Mm,
It was dramatic, very
mm,
heavy. And the subsequent, on one hand, I was happy that I was finally seeing my first menses. And
yeah.
then with the subsequent cycles, I noticed that it was always heavy. Like I would start my period and I must get stained, And you
Mm.
remember our uniforms, you know how our pleated skirts used to be.
All right.
And
Yeah, I do.
yeah, back then, I didn't, having like a spare skirt with me was not even an option. Like whatever
Mm,
I thought, I just thought, okay, well, I have to. I was always on guard, and all of this to say that when when I think it was 3 years into my cycles that
Yeah.
my mom, so I was doing my internship. It wasn't 3 years, I think 2 years. I was doing my internship in, no, not, scratch that. I started my period in SS1, and
Yeah.
then,
Oh, Ofure,
um,
let me just cut you briefly. For
yeah,
those who are not familiar with the Nigerian secondary school system, which I believe is also similar to the British secondary school system, SS1 in North America would be, I think, about grade 10.
okay,
So it's, I think secondary school ends in grade 12, I believe. I'm not very sure right now. So that would be like
okay,
grade 10, just so people are aware. And I think your age in SS1 would be about maybe 14, 15. Oh, no,
13. So I was
13.
13 there.
All
Yes,
right. All
I
right.
was
Okay.
13. And
Okay.
so it's beautiful that you actually giving all this context because it would also, I imagine it would also help people to know how differently, the journeys might be. Because I know people who started their periods at 10 or
Hmm.
11.
Mhm.
So when I started my period, as I said, I was excited and at the same time, it was stressful every month,
Yeah.
dealing with the
Yeah.
heavy flows. And
Hmm.
then fast forward to uni when I started my
See?
actual training exactly. Mine was luckily in a fertility clinic. Yes. I was there with two other students from Unilab, and
Yeah.
so at that point, we were helping out. We were like, extra lab assistants, but
Oh,
most of
yeah.
the serious work was being done by their lab techs, obviously.
Right.
And, one time my mom was like, why don't you ask about your heavy periods? I mean, I was already an undergraduate, so it felt like,
Right.
okay, yeah, why not? I just took that leap and then asked him, and he's like, okay, you've been having heavy periods. When did you just ask me like the basic questions? And I'm like, okay, Ofri, if you feel comfortable to do an ultrasound,
Hmm.
then you will have a clearer picture. And I'm like, an ultrasound, okay. So my mom, and she's like, I think if you feel comfortable doing an ultrasound, why not? And that was the like, I won't say turning point, but it was like, it gave so much more clarity. We
Hmm.
did the ultrasound, and that was when I realized that I had polycystic ovaries.
Hmm.
So that took it upon himself to educate me further, told me what that meant, and then mentioned so he gave me the statistics then of how women with PCOS tend to
Yeah.
have difficulty conceiving.
Hmm.
And even hearing at that point didn't, just to show how much of a possibilist I am. I heard what he was saying and I was like, "Ah, it cannot be me." As in,
Hmm.
it didn't settle because
It don't
again,
fit be.
you know, hearing in my mind, fertility struggle did not run in my family. That's how naive I
Yeah.
was, because
Hmm.
nobody, not my elder sister, nobody in my family,
Not your mom.
not my mom, nobody in my family had it. So I just thought, well, cannot be me. And
Hmm.
so I continued. Then he recommended metformin, which didn't help me much. I don't know. It was just, yeah, metformin is another tricky one because depending on the state of your insulin resistance, it could completely turn your cycles even crazy. But
Oh, wow.
yeah, I continued with my heavy flow until, until I got married, and then I felt, yeah, I came face to face with, the real hurdles.
And at what point did you realize that you were having difficulty conceiving? Did you start trying immediately after you got married, or you felt like, what, I'll just wait a bit? At what point did you really realize that, oh my gosh, this is something that I need to pay extra attention to? That's after you
Yes,
got married.
yes. So I will, maybe it would help to give some context here, some further context. So I finished my undergrad, and then moved to Nottingham for my master's degree.
Masters. Yeah.
Yes, but this was just a single year, right?
Hmm.
And um, right before I left, my husband and I, my boyfriend then,
Yeah.
we did introduction. So everybody knew that okay, these two are looking to, settle down together. And so we did
Right.
introduction, we separated for a year, and right after the master's program ended, I got an offer for a doctoral fellowship in
Hmm.
Germany for my PhD. So
All right.
knowing that I was going to be moving to Germany, it was already clear, like both of us, my husband and I, after being separated for a year, we knew, okay, well, we were going to get married in that
Hmm.
short space of time.
Yeah.
So came back home, did the wedding, and then we traveled back together. Anyways, it turned out that that fellowship, being an EU funded one, was only going to be given, so it had a condition attached to it, not just for
Yeah.
me, but for all the fellows, that
Yeah.
we're being employed or we're being granted a fellowship as employees, not as students,
Hmm.
but as employees,
Oh,
on the
wow.
condition that we will not be coming with our families. So our families will not be um collecting any stipend, any additional stipends.
I
You get.
see.
And in hindsight, I understand why now because those grants are secured years before they even start. So they're
Mm-hmm.
securing them for single applicants. They're not thinking of
Yeah.
how many dependents you may have or how many kids, whatever.
Hmm.
So when I started, our manager then told me like she didn't even mince words. She was like she sent me an email with the contract and then she's like happy married life, Ofure. I'm happy to hear that you're getting married, blah blah. This is to inform you that the the fellowship does not include
Your
any
husband.
of your family members. And she didn't stop there. She's like, and in the 3 years that you will be doing your research, you will not be expected to get pregnant.
Oh my
As in,
gosh.
she just puts it there, like in the open, like because, of course, she didn't just say we will not be expected if pregnant. She says because there will be no extension for the time needed for your PhD to be completed. Obviously, if you get pregnant, you need to be out of the lab. You cannot do your research anymore, and then the consortium will have delays with all of their reports and whatever. So I looked at my husband. I'm like, okay, guy, this is what they're saying. As much as I was, looking forward to having my first kid at 25. By the way, I was 25 when I got married.
Hmm.
I was also ready to just, put it on hold for 3 years. And my husband also agreed. He's like, okay, yes, why not? But anyway, studying. And he was also making plans to come study, get his master's degree from Germany. So
Hmm.
between us, we just agreed 3 years no babies,
Yeah.
and then we can start. And that was at that point, not so bad, right?
Yeah.
The only the only thing we didn't consider was the the effect of the contraceptive on my
Hmm.
health,
I feel like
right?
this is something we need to even talk about separately, like just contraceptives and
Yes.
the long-term effect on women's reproductive and just general
Yep,
health.
I fully agree.
But I will not derail this particular topic, so I'll just let you continue.
Yeah, no
Continue your
problem.
story. Yeah.
So it's anyway just like a side note, yeah. So we were all happy to get on board with the agreement, with the contract, signed it all. It was, the future was looking brighter, all well and good until it was the last year of my PhD.
Yeah.
And we figured, well, we're getting to the end,
Yeah.
typically takes 9, 10 months for the baby to come. So yeah, we can as well start trying now. And
Right.
we started trying. Nothing was happening until I just felt really sick one time and got tested and saw that, well, I was pregnant.
Oh,
And it was
wow.
perfect timing. It was the last year of my PhD. This was in January 2013.
Hmm.
So I thought, okay, well, wonderful. And at this point, you can imagine I was already burnt out. This
I
is,
can imagine. I can imagine.
and not burnt out from the stress of trying, or burnt out from the madness that a German PhD is. And I think any PhD in the world, it
Yeah.
was, it was a madness. And I also experienced the effects on my health. As I speak to you now, and I'm not ashamed or shy to say this. I am currently on thyroid medication, and I've
Hmm.
been for every year since I started trying to conceive. So,
Oh,
and
wow.
this is from the second year of my PhD.
Oh, wow.
You you cannot tell me that the stress, I don't know what research is out there, but I'm fully convinced that, stress and environmental stress, bodily stress, everything added to, have make my thyroid go I don't know, gaga, but I'm currently getting supplements for that. At that point, at the point of my first pregnancy, which was in 2013, the doctors checked and then told me that, well, my thyroid hormone levels were low and I would need supplements. So I started with, I think, 50 micrograms. It was very low then.
I
Um,
wonder about the thyroid thing because one of my friends also told me that she's having issues with her thyroid and she
okay.
had a baby last year. Baby is less than a year old. That's her first child. And she said
Wow.
ever since she had the baby, things went haywire. So
See?
I'm wondering if is it you so what was it the pregnancy that triggered that? Was it
Wow.
the contraceptive or was it just the stress of trying to complete your PhD?
Funny thing, I would never know. But all I
Mm,
know is I was already prescribed and I was already on thyroid meds before the first pregnancy. So
I
whether it was
see.
a cause or an effect, I will never know, you know.
Mm,
So I know that when I tested and I saw I was pregnant,
yeah.
it was already like 2 weeks, 2.5-ish weeks after my period was due. And
Mm,
bear in mind that with all the stress going on, and being, having PCOS, my cycles were all over the place. Like
mm,
sometimes I will go 2 months with not a single bleed. And then when it comes, it will go on for like 6, 7 days. It was just crazy.
mm.
I recall one time that I bled, you know, and this was way before I started trying to have kids. I had my period for 10 days
Oh,
nonstop.
wow. Oh,
10 days nonstop. It
wow.
was heavy.
This is
Um,
wild.
and
Ofure, based on what
mhm,
you're telling me, I've just made up my mind that on this show, I'm going to really, you know, dedicate time to focusing on women's health.
yes,
I
I
feel
think
like it's
that's a great
important.
idea.
Yeah, I feel like it's important for women to come on the show to just come talk about their health and the impacts it's having on them. And I would also like to focus on men's health too at some point. I just
Yes.
feel like I might not really be able to relate in terms of my own personal experiences,
Well,
but I'd also like for men to talk about their health as well. Now,
absolutely. Absolutely.
I feel like at this point, this is going to be a multi-part, feature.
Well, well,
And we're already hitting the 30 minutes mark. So I'm glad that you talked about the beginning. If you don't mind, maybe you can just try to wrap up the beginning and then we'll definitely come back to talk about
okay.
the twists the uncertainties you experienced, the impact it had on you mentally. So I'll just let you wrap up, talking about this pregnancy you had and the final year of your PhD.
Yes, beautiful. Sure. So I had at 7 weeks, I went to tests, and the doctors obviously told me that, well, it cannot be 7 weeks because the HCG levels are very low. And that was the first sign that, okay, so Lara, bear with me because I need to describe the emotions around it
Oh,
most.
please do. Yeah.
Because for a couple who has been trying to conceive, a newlywed couple, even though we
Hmm.
didn't start trying actively until with the third year mark, you don't think that anything could go wrong. You think for the fact that you have tested and you've seen a positive test, your baby is
Yeah.
there and
Yeah.
is alive and well.
Mm-hmm.
And so when the doctor is telling you this is not a viable pregnancy, you think,
Hmm.
What are these people saying? You've not heard of exceptions. You're
Mm-hmm.
thinking, my case will be different. And then
Hmm.
you go back and you start testing and you start seeing the test mark getting lighter until the bleeding starts.
Hmm.
And it's devastating. And that's to say the least, because it's not just your body, it's not just the feeling that, your body has disappointed you.
Hmm.
Your mind is constantly, I'll speak for myself. My
Yeah.
mind was constantly trying to find out where I went wrong. What did you,
Hmm.
Offer, were you working so hard? Were you not sleeping enough? Were you not eating well enough?
You
You
started
know,
to
you,
blame yourself.
the, yes, the guilt consumed me so much. And then the bleeding started, and that was a whole new, the pain was out of this world. I know that I had long and heavy and painful periods, but I
Oh my
never
God.
knew how different, the contractions
For
would
a
be.
miscarriage was.
Yes, it
I'm
was
so sorry you
nasty.
went through this really difficult experience.
And 3 times. So that was the
Oh
first
my
one.
gosh. Did you say 3 times?
Yes, we had 3 miscarriages before we had our first child. And
Okay.
it was, so the first one that I just explained, happened in 2013, then 2016 in July. That was only 6 weeks, so 2 weeks afterwards, that was it. It was, I knew I was pregnant, and I knew we had like a festival to attend in Germany with,
Hmm.
we're visiting our friends up north. And with that caution of, wanting this to stay this time around, I was very
Yeah.
careful. But of course, festival people are walking, taking long walks, and I just thought, okay, well, taking walks is healthy. Nothing can happen. And,
Hmm.
you know, a few days later, the bleeding started again, and then the guilt all over. You think, okay, why offer? You should not have gone for that. You shouldn't have taken walks. You shouldn't, you know. So that happened again that was the second time.
Before
Um,
Offer, before you talk about the third miscarriage, it's I'm even hearing your story for the first time. We talked about it, but I never knew you had 3 miscarriages, and that's devastating, honestly.
oh,
I just want to take you back.
yes,
So the
yes.
first miscarriage, your final year of PhD,
Mhm.
what other emotions did you have to deal with? Did you feel like, you know what, I don't even want to continue with this PhD, or this is the reason why I've lost my baby? This is the reason why I'm here. I've given up so much for this degree. And how did that impact you? And how did you push through even continuing your PhD and graduating?
Honestly, I thought it was from that point of the first miscarriage that I started thinking, having these random thoughts in my head, like, okay, what if you are never going to have kids? What if
Hmm.
this is always going to be your story, But generally speaking, I just happen to have my hope renewed every cycle. So the doctors already told me, and maybe this was also coming from feedback from the doctors. They would check me, they would run the blood tests. Sometimes is the progesterone level that is too low. Other times is the thyroid hormones that need additional supplementation.
Right.
Sometimes is the prolactin. I remember there was a time that they told me my prolactin level, this was also during my PhD, by the way, told me my
Mm.
prolactin level was too high, but I wasn't having like the, physical, because if your prolactin levels are too high, you would be expected to be lactating, you know.
Mm.
But it wasn't happening to me. So I was just, things were just my body at that point
Your
was
body
was
was
a
just turning on your own.
I'm telling you, it was doing its own shit. Like it was
Oh
just,
my gosh.
and it was like one thing, you know how when you take a car to the mechanic and it's like, okay, this is broken, but because this is
Mhm.
broken, this other thing is affected and this other,
Oh
and
my gosh.
I can imagine, I can just, and being a research scientist, I was doing research then.
Right.
It helps, it helps, you know, a great deal for me to take the feedback from the doctors, go back, do my own research and advocate for myself because I know
Mm.
that even you can tell, like when you step into the doctor's office, they're already looking at their clocks. Like they don't want to spend too much time on you. Why? I would never
Right.
understand. So I'm like, okay, you guys tell me what you're seeing.
They have bills, I guess. I mean, this is one of the things that frustrates me with visiting doctors because as you're entering, it's like, you know what? They're giving you the look of, lady, I do not have all day. Get to the point
Yeah.
and get out.
You know, and that is so discouraging on its own for somebody who knows you have a 30-day win, as in you have 30 days, half of which your body is trying to get things ready for showdown in the second half. And depending
Yeah,
on when you're seeing the doctor, that sort of treatment can already demoralize you.
I agree.
So it was easy for me by virtue of what I was into at that time to just, okay, tell me what you want to tell me. Even if you just tell me, then I will go home, do all my research, and then see what's translated to what it means for me. So all of this to say that it changed me, no doubt, because there's a lot of optimism in the first half. But when, your period comes at the end of the day, it's like, okay, you feel deflated. You're thinking, okay, can I do this again? All the doubts start flooding in. But yeah, it's a journey that you just have to you just have to find a way to set yourself up for, you
Mm,
know, especially in a way that when you are not feeling it, when you've run out of hope and all the optimism, you're surrounded by people who literally got you, as in they are
yeah.
there.
And they lift
That
you up even when you don't
yes,
have no strength to
yes,
continue.
yes. And I hope I will get the chance to talk about those people because these are
Oh, definitely. Oh, definitely. Like I said, this is going to be a multi-session feature. And Ofure, thank you for sharing that. And I just want to say to the listeners, I know this is an audio podcast. When I introduced the plot twisting show, I had mentioned to you that we're going to have a mix of live guests. Sometimes it will be audio, sometimes it will be video, sometimes I will be reading the stories you send in. And one thing people need to know, like life rarely follows the outline we've imagined.
yeah,
Sometimes we skip chapters.
yeah,
Sometimes we have to rewrite endings. And life always brings different plot twists that sometimes we're not expecting. So right now, I'm going to end the first session with Offer It. This is part one. There's going to be multiple parts to it. And to our listeners, I just want to say if you feel like you'd love to share your story, I'll be happy to either host you live or just read out your stories. And if you want to DM me, you can DM me at the plot twisting. I'm on Instagram. Follow me on Instagram, on X, on TikTok. You can also send an email to theplot twisting@gmail.com. or you can submit your story through the link in my bio on Instagram. Wherever you are in your chapter, if it is joyful, messy, quiet, uncertain, there's always room for you on the Plot Twisting channel. I'd love to share your story. I'm on YouTube as well at the Plot Twisting. Please follow me on all the socials, share your story. I want to find out if your life were a book, what chapter do you think you're currently in right now? Leave a comment below, send me a DM, follow me, and watch out for more of Ofure's story. Thank you. Ofure,
Thank,
thank you
thank
so much
you.
for joining. We're going to continue your story, like I said, but we're going to end part one right here.
Thanks, dear. Talk to you
You're
soon.
welcome. Ciao, ciao.
Ciao.